The night had already taken hold of the castle. It did not arrive all at once, nor did it bring any sudden stillness. Instead, it settled slowly, like a breath drawn in and never fully released. One by one, the lights within the high stone walls had faded, doors had closed, footsteps had quieted, voices had softened, and then disappeared entirely. Above, the tower stood in silence. Below, the halls lay empty, and deep within the lower corridors, where the warmth of the day lingered longest, the kitchen remained awake. It was not a place of noise now. Not as it had been in the earlier hours, when servants moved quickly and voices overlapped in hurried rhythm. That time had passed. What remained was something slower, something quieter, the soft glow of firelight. It came from the great hearth set into the far wall, where embers rested beneath a low flame. The fire did not crackle loudly. It breathed gently, rising and settling in its own quiet rhythm. Warmth filled the room, steady, familiar, and within that warmth, moving without hurry, was the boy. He was not tall, nor strong in the way of soldiers or guards. His movements held no urgency, no sharpness. Everything he did seemed guided not by thought, but by repetition, by something learned over many nights and carried forward without question. He stood at the long wooden table, his hands resting lightly against its worn surface. For a moment, he did nothing, only listened. The fire behind him shifted softly. Somewhere above, deep within the stone of the castle, something settled, a faint sound, then nothing at all. The boy reached for the knife. It lay where it always did, its handle smooth from use, its edge catching the faint glow of the fire. He lifted it without looking, his fingers finding their place with quiet certainty. And, slowly, he began. Cut, pause, cut. The sound was soft, barely more than a whisper against the wood. It did not disturb the silence. It became part of it. Beside him, a small bundle of herbs released a faint scent as they were pressed and separated. Earthy, gentle, familiar. The smell drifted upward, carried by the warmth of the room, blending with the faint trace of smoke from the hearth. Nothing rushed. Nothing needed to. The boy worked as he always had. Cut, pause, cut. After a time, he gathered what he had prepared and turned toward the fire. The pot already hung in place, its surface darkened by long use. A thin line of steam rose from within it, barely visible in the dim light. He did not lift the lid immediately. Instead, he rested his hand against the edge of the hearth, feeling the warmth, steady, unchanging. Then gently, he stirred. The spoon moved through the liquid with a slow, even motion. Stir, pause, stir. The scent deepened. Something simple, something warm, something that did not need to be named. The boy watched the surface of the pot for a moment, not searching for change, only observing what was already there. Then he stepped back. The kitchen remained still. A long table behind him waited. The shelves along the walls held their quiet shapes. Bowls, cups, and plates rested where they had been placed, untouched, unchanged, everything in its place, as it had always been. After a while, the boy turned again. His steps were soft against the stone floor. Step, pause, step. He moved toward the shelves, his hand reaching without hesitation toward a single plate. It was plain, white, though time had softened its color. He held it carefully, not out of caution, but out of habit. Then he returned to the table. The plate rested at its center. He did not place it at the end, nor to one side. Always the same position, always the same space. From the hearth, he brought the pot. Slowly, carefully, he poured. The liquid settled into the plate with a quiet sound, filling it just enough, no more, no less. He set the pot aside. For a moment, he stood there, looking at the plate. The surface of the meal shifted slightly, then stilled. A thin line of steam rose from it, fading as it reached the cooler air above. The boy did not sit. He never did. Instead, he turned away. Step, pause, step. He moved back toward the hearth, adjusting the fire without thought. A small piece of wood was added. The embers responded slowly, a faint glow strengthening, then settling again. The rhythm continued. Fire, breath, silence. Time passed, not measured, not counted, only felt in the slow changes of warmth and shadow. After a while, the boy returned to the table. His steps remained the same. Step, pause, step. He did not look immediately. There was no need. But when he reached the table, his gaze lowered, as it always did. The plate remained where it had been placed, untouched, as it had always been. The surface of the meal had cooled slightly. The steam had thinned. Nothing had shifted. Nothing had changed. The boy stood there for a long moment. Then quietly, he reached for another plate. His hand moved without hesitation. He placed it beside the first, not opposite, not far, just beside it. Close enough that the edges nearly touched. He did not seem to notice, or if he did not pause. From the pot, he poured again, the second plate, filled in the same quiet way, the same amount, the same care. 2 plates now rested upon the table, side by side. The boy set the pot down once more. The fire breathed softly behind him. The kitchen remained still. For a moment, he looked at them. Not with confusion, not with question, only stillness. Then, slowly, he turned away. Step, pause, step. The plates remained. The room held its quiet. The fire warmed the air. And somewhere within that stillness, beneath the soft rhythm of flame and breath, something felt complete. The boy did not return to the table again that night. He continued his quiet tasks, his movements unchanged, his rhythm steady, but the plates remained where they were placed, side by side, waiting. And though the castle slept, and the halls remained empty, and no footsteps crossed the kitchen floor, the second plate did not feel unnecessary, only present, as though it had always belonged there, as though it had simply been remembered. The night did not deepen all at once. It settled gently, as it had before, layering itself over the castle in slow, quiet measure. The walls held their silence. The corridors remained empty. No voices returned. No doors opened. Everything that had come to rest remained at rest. Deep within the lower halls, the kitchen still breathed its quiet warmth. The fire had softened. Its flame was smaller now, steadier, resting low among the embers. The light it cast was dim, but enough. It touched the edges of the room, the corners of the table, the faint outlines of objects long familiar. Nothing moved, and yet something remained. The boy stood near the hearth, his back turned to the table. His hands rested lightly against the worn stone, feeling the warmth that lingered there. His breathing was slow, even, matching the quiet rhythm of the fire. Fire, pause, breath, pause. He did not turn immediately. There was no reason to. The night held its shape without asking anything more. After some time, he reached for the spoon once again. It rested where he had left it, its surface catching a faint line of light. He lifted it slowly, without sound, and lowered it into the pot. Stir, pause, spur. The liquid moved in a slow circle, the surface shifting gently before settling once more. The scent rose again, warm, simple, unchanged. Nothing in it spoke of urgency. Nothing in it suggested it would be needed. And yet, he continued. Stir, pause, stir. The boy's movements remained careful, deliberate, as though the act itself was enough. After a while, he lowered the spoon and let it rest. The kitchen returned to stillness. Behind him, the long wooden table waited. 2 plates remained upon it, side by side. He turned. Step, pause, step. His footsteps were soft against the stone floor, barely more than a shift in the air. The firelight moved with him, stretching shadows across the room, then drawing them back again. He approached the table slowly. There was no hesitation, no expectation, only the quiet continuation of routine. As he reached the edge of the table, his gaze lowered. The first plate remained, as it had been, untouched. The surface of the meal had cooled slightly more, its warmth fading into the still air. Nothing disturbed it. Nothing had taken from it. It rested, complete, as before. But the second plate, the boy did not move. He did not reach for it. He simply stood, looking. The surface was no longer still, not fully. There, along one edge, faint break in the smoothness. A small shift, barely visible, as though something had passed through it, lightly, without force. He remained where he was. The fire behind him breathed softly. The kitchen held its quiet. For a long moment, nothing changed. The boy's gaze rested upon the plate, not searching for answers, not questioning, only observing what was already there. The meal did not move again. The faint disturbance remained, subtle, incomplete, but present. After a while, he lifted his hand, not quickly, not with intention to correct, only slowly. His fingers hovered above the plate, not touching, not adjusting, simply near, as though feeling for something that was no longer there. Then, just as slowly, he lowered his hand again. The plate remained as it was. The boy turned. Step, pause, step. He moved back toward the hearth, his movements unchanged, his rhythm steady. The spoon rested where it had been left. The pot remained warm. Nothing in the kitchen spoke of intrusion. Nothing suggested presence. And yet, something had shifted. He added a small piece of wood to the fire. The embers responded, softly, a faint glow rising, then settling once more. Fire, pause, breath. Time passed, not measured, not counted, only felt in the slow cooling of air, the dimming of light, the quiet settling of all things. After a while, the boy returned to the table again. Step, pause, step. The plates remained, side by side. He looked first to the untouched one, still the same, then to the other. The faint disturbance had not spread. It had not deepened. It remained exactly as it had been, no more, no less. As though whatever had touched it had done so only once, and no further. The boy stood there for a long moment. Then quietly, he reached for a cloth. It lay folded at the edge of the table, clean, unused. He lifted it gently, and for a moment it seemed as though he might wipe the plate clean, smooth its surface, return it to what it had been. But he did not. Instead, he set the cloth down again, untouched. The plate remained. As it was, the boy stepped back. Step, pause, step. He did not remove the food. He did not replace it. He left both plates where they were, side by side, waiting. The kitchen returned to stillness. The fire softened further. The air cooled slightly, though the warmth remained close to the hearth. Nothing moved, nothing spoke, and yet, within the quiet, something lingered, not seen, not heard, but known. as though the space across the table, the space between the plates, was no longer empty. The boy did not look toward it. He did not sit. He did not wait. He simply continued. Step, pause, step, back to the hearth, back to the quiet rhythm. The castle above remained asleep. The halls remained empty. No footsteps came. No doors opened. But within the kitchen, the two plates remained, one untouched, one gently disturbed. And though the night held its silence, and the fire breathed softly, and nothing revealed itself, the meal on the second plate did not grow cold. It held its warmth longer than it should, as though something unseen remained close. Beyond the kitchen, the castle held many rooms. Most of them slept. Doors remained closed. Corridors stretched in silence. Tapestries hung unmoving against the stone, their patterns softened by darkness and time. The air in those places was cooler, still, untouched by firelight. But there was one room, not far from the kitchen, that did not feel entirely at rest, the dining hall. It was larger than the kitchen, far larger, its ceiling rising high into shadow where the beams disappeared from sight. Along the walls, narrow windows stood dark, their shapes barely visible against the stone, and at the center of the hall, the table, long, wooden, worn smooth by years of use. It stretched from one end of the room to the other, its surface empty, its length undisturbed. Chairs stood along either side, pushed in neatly, their backs aligned in quiet order. Everything was in place, as it had been left. The boy moved slowly along the corridor that led there. Step, pause, step. The lantern hung low in his hand now, its flame small but steady. The light did not reach far. It did not need to. It marked only the path before him, one step at a time. Behind him, the warmth of the kitchen faded. Ahead, the air grew cooler, still, unmoving. He reached the doorway. For a moment, he did not enter. He stood at the threshold, the lantern held quietly at his side, its glow touching the edge of the great hall, but not yet filling it. The table remained in shadow, the chairs unmoving, the silence complete. After a while, he stepped forward. Step, pause, step. The lantern's light followed him into the room, stretching across the floor, climbing slowly onto the surface of the table, revealing its grain, its marks, the faint traces of time left behind. Nothing disturbed it. Nothing had changed. The boy walked along its side. His steps were soft, measured, familiar. Step, pause, step. The chairs stood as they always did, their legs steady upon the stone floor, their positions unchanged. One after another, they remained still, their shapes repeating in quiet rhythm along the length of the table. The boy did not touch them. He did not need to. He moved past each one slowly, his gaze resting briefly upon them, then moving on. The hall held its silence. No fire burned here. No warmth lingered. Only the faint light of the lantern and the quiet presence of the room itself. At the center of the table, he stopped. The lantern lifted slightly. The light spread. The surface of the wood lay bare, smooth, uninterrupted. For a moment, he remained still, listening. There was nothing, no sound, no movement, only the quiet, deep and complete. And slowly, he reached into the fold of cloth draped over his arm, a plate, the same kind as before, plain, softened by time. He placed it upon the table, carefully, without sound. The plate rested near the center, not at the head, not at the end, but somewhere between, a place without distinction, a place without meaning, or so it seemed. The boy stepped back, the lantern lower slightly. The light softened. The plate remained. Alone. For a moment, nothing followed. The hall remained still, the chairs unmoving, the shadows unchanged. Then, the boy reached again, a second plate. He placed it beside the first, close, not touching, but near enough that their presence felt shared. 2 plates now rested upon the long wooden table. In the center of the empty hall, the boy did not hesitate. He did not question. He simply stood, looking. The lantern's flame flickered once, then steadied. The light moved gently across the plates, catching their edges, their curves, then fading again into shadow. After a time, he turned. Step, pause, step. He moved along the table once more, his path continuing toward the far end of the hall. The plates remained behind him, side by side, still, waiting. The chairs stood in their places, one after another, unchanged, until the boy slowed, not suddenly, not in alarm, only slightly. There, along the right side of the table, one chair did not rest as the others did. It was not far from its place, not overturned, not disturbed, but not fully aligned. Its legs angled just enough that it no longer sat flush against the table. A small space remained between wood and wood, barely noticeable, almost nothing, and yet present. The boy stopped. A lantern's light shifted, falling gently across the chair, tracing its edge, revealing the quiet difference. He did not move closer. He did not reach out. He simply stood, looking. The rest of the chairs remained as they had been, perfectly in place. Only this one held its slight distance. The hall remained silent. The air did not shift. No sound followed. After a long moment, the boy took a step, pause, step. He passed the chair without adjusting it, without touching it, without returning it to its place. He continued along the table, his rhythm unchanged, his breathing steady. At the far end of the hall, he stopped once more. The lantern lowered, the light dimmed slightly. He turned. The length of the table stretched before him, long, empty, still. At its center, the 2 plates rested, side by side, and just beyond them, along the right, the single chair remained, slightly apart. The space between it and the table did not close. It remained, quiet, unresolved. The boy stood for a moment longer. Then, slowly, he turned away. Step, pause, step. He left the hall as he had entered, without sound, without disturbance. Behind him, the lantern's glow withdrew, pulling the light with it, returning the room to shadow. The table remained, the plates remained, the chair remained. And though no footsteps crossed the floor, and no hand reached for wood or stone, the space, at that place along the table, did not feel empty, only waiting. The kitchen remained where it had always been, warm, quiet, unchanged. Beyond its walls, the castle held its silence. The dining hall rested in shadow. The corridors lay still. Nothing called. Nothing moved. And yet, within the kitchen, something continued. The fire. It had not gone out. Not fully. The boy stood once more at the hearth, his hands resting lightly against the worn stone. The embers beneath the low flame glowed faintly, their light soft, steady, as though they had never dimmed. Fire, pause, breath. He did not remember adding more wood, not recently. And yet warmth remained. The flame, though small, did not weaken. It did not struggle. It simply continued, as it had before, as though something unseen had kept it from fading. The boy watched it for a time, not searching, not questioning, only observing what was already there. After a while, he turned. Step, pause, step. The table stood where he had left it, 2 plates, side by side. The first remained untouched. The second still held that faint disturbance along its edge. Nothing more, nothing less. But as he stepped closer, something else became clear. The meal upon the second plate still held warmth, not as before, not freshly poured, but not cooled, not settled, not still. A faint line of steam rose, barely visible, fading as it reached the air. The boy stopped. The lantern's light shifted gently across the surface, catching the movement, then letting it go. He did not reach for it. He did not move it. He simply stood, watching. Fire behind him breathed softly. Fire, pause, breath. After a long moment, he turned away. Step, pause, step, back to the hearth. His hand moved toward the woodpile beside it. Small piece lay there, as it always did. He picked it up, slowly, turning it once in his hand, feeling its weight, its shape, its place within the quiet rhythm of his work. Then, gently, he placed it upon the embers. The fire responded, not with sudden light, not with sound, but with a slow, steady deepening of glow. The flame rose, just enough, then settled again. As though it had expected the gesture, as though it had been waiting, the boy remained there for a time, listening. The kitchen held its stillness. The walls did not shift. The air did not move. And yet, the warmth felt fuller, not stronger, not brighter, only complete. After a while, he stepped back. Step, pause, step. He moved along the length of the room, his gaze passing over the shelves, the bowls, the quiet arrangement of things long untouched. Everything remained in place. Everything remained as it had been, until he slowed. Near the edge of the hearth, where the light did not fully reach, something rested that had not been there before, not placed, not moved, simply present. A small iron tool, used for tending the fire, its handle worn smooth, its shape familiar. The boy stood still. The lantern lowered slightly, its light brushing across the iron, revealing its outline, its quiet presence against the stone. He did not remember leaving it there, not in that place, not so near. And yet, it rested as though it belonged, as though it had been set down with care. He stepped closer. Step, pause, step. His hand moved toward it, slowly, without urgency. For a moment, his fingers hovered above the handle. Then, gently, he lifted it. The metal was warm, not hot, not cold, warm, as though it had been used recently. The boy held it for a moment, then lowered it again, placing it where it had always been kept, among the others, in its proper place. He stepped back. Step, pause, step. The hearth remained. The fire continued. Nothing spoke. Nothing revealed itself. And yet, something had changed. Not in what could be seen, not in what could be touched, but in the quiet sense that the work of the kitchen was no longer carried by one alone. The boy turned once more. Step, pause, step. He moved back toward the table. The plates remained. Side by side, the second still held its faint warmth. The air around them felt undisturbed, and yet not empty. He stood there for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached for a cup. It rested among the others, plain, simple, waiting. He placed it beside the plates, not directly in front, not carefully measured, just near, as though completing something that had already begun. He did not fill it. He did not move it further. He simply let it remain. The fire softened behind him. The light dimmed slightly. The kitchen settled once more into its quiet rhythm. Fire, pause, breath, pause. The boy turned away. Step, pause, step. He did not look back again, but the table remained, 2 plates, 1 cup, and a warmth that did not fade, as though the fire, though small, was not the only thing being tended. The night continued without change. It did not move forward in any sudden way, nor did it return to what it had been. It simply remained, stretching gently across the castle, holding everything in its quiet, steady rhythm. Above, the towers stood in silence. Beyond, the halls lay empty. And within the kitchen, the warmth endured. The fire had softened further. Its flame was low now, resting close to the embers, its glow steady but faint. The light it cast was gentle, enough to shape the room, not enough to disturb its stillness. Fire, pause, breath. The boy stood near the hearth, as he had before. His hands rested lightly against the stone, his posture unchanged, his breathing slow, even, part of the quiet rhythm that filled the room. Nothing called for his attention. Nothing required his movement, and yet, after a time, he turned. Step, pause, step. He moved toward the table. The lantern remained low, its flame steady, its light brushing softly across the surface as he approached. The plates were still there, side by side, the cup beside them, everything as it had been. At first, nothing seemed different. The first plate remained untouched. The second held its faint disturbance. The cup stood where it had been placed. The boy stepped closer. Step, pause, step. His gaze lowered, and there, quietly, something had changed. Not in a way that called attention, not in a way that broke the stillness, but in a way that could not be undone. The second plate was no longer full, not empty, not cleared, but less. Small portion had been taken, so little that it might have been overlooked, so subtle that it might have been imagined. But the surface was no longer whole. A space remained where something had once been. The boy did not move. He did not reach for the plate. He did not turn away. He simply stood, looking. The fire behind him breathed softly. Fire, pause, breath. After a long moment, he drew in a slow breath. The air held its warmth. The scent of the meal lingered, unchanged, as though nothing had been disturbed. And yet, something had been taken. He remained still, listening. The kitchen did not answer. No sound followed. No movement crossed the room. The walls held their silence. The floor remained untouched. Only the faint space upon the plate spoke of anything different. After a while, he stepped back. Pause. Step. He did not remove the plate. He did not replace it. He left it where it was, as it had been left before. The boy turned toward the hearth once more. Step. Pause. Step. His movements remained calm, unchanged. He reached for the spoon. It rested where it always did. He lifted it slowly, lowering it once more into the pot. Stir. Pause. Stir. The liquid moved as before, slow, steady, undisturbed. Nothing within it reflected what had changed. Nothing within it suggested anything had been taken. And yet, the boy continued. Stir. Pause. Stir. After a time, he lowered the spoon again. The kitchen returned to stillness. Behind him, the table waited. The plates remained. The cup stood quiet. The space upon the second plate did not fill. It did not shift. It simply remained as it was. After a while, the boy turned again. Step. Pause. Step. He returned to the table. The lantern's light followed him, stretching gently across the wood, touching the edges of the plates, the curve of the cup. He stood there for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached for the first plate, the untouched one. His hand rested against its edge, steady, careful. He did not lift it. He did not remove it. He only turned it slightly. Not enough to change its place, only enough to shift its position so that it faced more directly toward the second. The movement was small, almost nothing, but it remained. 2 plates. Now, not only beside one another, but facing, the boy stepped back. Step, pause, step. He did not adjust the second plate. He did not correct what had been taken. He allowed it to remain as it was. The fire softened further. The light dimmed slightly. The kitchen held its quiet. Time passed, not measured, not marked, only felt in the slow cooling of air, the quiet settling for a thing that had been placed. And then, softly, the boy became aware of something, not a sound, not a movement, but a rhythm, faint, almost nothing, like breath, not his own. He did not turn. He did not search. He remained where he was. The feeling did not grow. It did not come closer. It simply existed for a moment. Then it was gone. The kitchen returned to stillness, complete, unbroken. The boy did not move. After a long while, he turned. Step, pause, step, back to the hearth, back to the quiet rhythm. The plates remained behind him. 2, 1 untouched, 1 gently taken from. And though nothing had been seen, nothing had been heard, the space at the table no longer felt empty, only shared. The night remained as it was. It did not grow darker, nor lighter, only settled further into itself. The castle above held its silence. The corridors did not stir. The dining hall remained empty, its long table untouched, its chairs unmoving. And within the kitchen, the quiet continued. The fire had lowered to a soft glow. Its flame was small now, resting close to the embers, its light gentle and untroubled. The warmth it gave was steady, enough to fill the space without calling attention to itself. Fire, pause, breath. The boy stood near the table, not at the hearth, not moving, only still. The 2 plates remained before him, 1 untouched, 1 gently taken from. The cup rested nearby. Nothing had changed, and yet something had. The space between the plates no longer felt empty, not fully. The boy's gaze rested upon them for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached for the pot. He lifted it with both hands, its weight familiar, its warmth steady against his palms. The motion was calm, practiced, unchanged from all the nights before. He stepped forward. Step, pause, step. He did not look toward the hearth. He did not return to routine as it had been. Instead, he remained at the table, the pot lowered slightly. The lantern's light brushed across its surface, then moved gently onto the plates. Without hesitation, he poured into the first plate, the untouched one. The liquid settled, filling the space that had cooled, restoring its warmth, its quiet presence. Then he moved the pot slightly and poured again into the second, not replacing what had been taken, not correcting it, but adding gently, as though acknowledging the space that remained. 2 plates, both now holding warmth, both now equal, not in form, but in presence. The boy set the pot down. He did not step away immediately. He stood there, looking. The fire behind him breathed softly. Fire, pause, breath. After a while, he reached for another plate, not the same as before, not placed beside the others, but drawn from the shelf with the same quiet certainty. He held it for a moment. Then, slowly, he placed it across from the first 2, not beside, not near, but opposite, as though completing a space, as though forming something that had not yet been finished. The table now held 3 plates, 2 together, 1 across. The boy did not pause. He did not question. He simply moved the pot once more and poured again. The 3rd plate filled, the same amount, the same care, the same quiet motion. He set the pot down again. The kitchen held its stillness. The fire softened. The air remained warm. 3 plates now rested upon the table, but the boy did not step back. Instead, he moved again. Pause. Step. He walked to the shelf, his hand reaching once more. A cup, then another. He returned. Step. Pause. Step. He placed 1 cup near the first 2 plates, and the other beside the 3rd, not perfectly aligned, not measured, but placed with quiet intention, as though the positions did not need to be exact, only present. The boy stepped back. Step. Pause. Step. He stood at the edge of the table. The lantern's light rested gently across the arrangement. 3 plates, 2 cups. The fire breathed behind him. Nothing moved. Nothing spoke. And yet the space felt different. Not empty, not waiting, but occupied. The boy did not sit. He never had. But this time he did not turn away immediately. He remained where he was, his hands resting lightly at his sides, his breathing slow, even. After a long moment, something shifted, not in sight, not in sound, but in presence. The air near the 3rd plate felt warmer, not from the fire, not from the food, but from something else, something that did not disturb, did not move, but remained. The boy did not look directly at it. He did not turn his head, but his gaze lowered slightly toward the space across from him. The 3rd plate, the cup beside it. Nothing changed, and yet the stillness there felt filled. After a while, the boy reached forward. His hand moved slowly, carefully, toward the cup nearest him. He lifted it, then paused. For a brief moment, the motion stopped, not uncertain, not interrupted, only held. Then, gently, he set the cup down again, closer to the center, not fully moved, not fully placed, but shifted, as though making room, as though allowing space where none had been before. The boy stepped back. Step. Pause. Step. He did not look again. He turned. Step. Pause. Step. Back toward the hearth, back toward the quiet rhythm of fire and breath. Behind him, the table remained. 3 plates, 2 cups, and a space across from him that no longer felt empty. The fire softened further. The light dimmed. The kitchen returned to stillness. But now, within that stillness, the second setting did not feel like an addition. It felt as though it had always been there. The night did not change. It did not return to what it had been, nor did it move toward anything new. It simply continued, holding the castle in its quiet, steady stillness. Above, the towers rested. The halls remained empty. The long wooden table in the dining hall stood untouched, its single chair still slightly apart, its surface waiting without need, and within the kitchen, the warmth endured. The fire had settled low. Its glow was soft now, barely rising above the embers, yet steady, unbroken. The light it gave was enough to shape the room, enough to hold the quiet together. Fire, pause, breath. The boy stood at the table, not watching, not waiting, only present. The 3 plates remained where they had been placed, 2 together, 1 cross, the cups beside them. Nothing had been moved, nothing had been disturbed, and yet something had settled. The space across from him no longer felt uncertain. It no longer felt new. It felt known. The boy reached for the knife. It lay where it always did. He lifted it without looking. Then, slowly, he began. Cut, pause, cut. The sound was soft, barely more than a breath against the wood. It did not break the stillness. It became part of it. The herbs released their faint scent once more, blending with the warmth of the kitchen, with the quiet presence that filled the space. Pause, cut. Nothing hurried, nothing changed, and yet the rhythm felt different, not in sound, not in movement, but in the way it was shared. After a time, the boy gathered what he had prepared. He turned toward the hearth. Step, pause, step. The pot waited. The fire breathed. He stirred. Stir, pause, stir. The liquid moved slowly, evenly, as it had before. But this time, he did not step back immediately. He remained, watching, as though allowing time, not for change, but for completion. After a while, he turned. Step, pause, step, back to the table. The plates waited. The cups remained. The space across from him felt steady. Without hesitation, he poured. First plate, second, third, each filled with the same quiet care. No more, no less. He set the pot aside. The 3 plates rested, warm, complete. The boy reached for the cups. He filled one, then the other. The liquid settled within them, catching the soft glow of the firelight. He placed them back, not precisely, not evenly, but where they belonged. The table now held its full arrangement: 3 plates, 2 cups, and the quiet space that needed no name. The boy stepped back. Step, pause, step. He stood at the edge of the table. For a moment, he did not move. His gaze rested forward, not fixed, not searching, only present. Then, slowly, he did something he had not done before. He sat. The chair beneath him did not make a sound. It accepted his weight, quietly, as though it had always been waiting. His hands rested lightly upon the table. The surface was warm beneath them, not from the fire, not entirely, but from something that remained. Across from him, the 3rd plate, the cup beside it. Nothing moved, nothing shifted, and yet the space felt occupied. The boy did not look directly. He did not raise his head, but his awareness rested there, calm, untroubled. After a while, he lifted his hand. Slowly, he reached toward the plate nearest him. His fingers hovered, then lowered. He took a small portion, not hurried, not hesitant, only steady. He ate. The motion was quiet, simple, unbroken. He did not look up. He did not listen. He simply continued. After a moment, he paused, not from need, not from thought, but as though allowing space. Across from him, nothing changed, and yet something responded, the faintest shift, not seen, not heard, but felt. The boy resumed, slowly, calmly. The rhythm continued. Eat, pause, breath. Time passed, not measured, not marked, only held within the quiet of the room. After a while, he lowered his hand. The plate before him remained partly full. The others, unchanged, and yet not untouched. The boy did not examine them. He did not compare. He simply remained seated for a moment longer. Then, slowly, he rose. The chair returned to stillness. Step, pause, step. He moved away from the table, back toward the hearth. The fire breathed softly. Fire, pause, breath. Behind him, the table remained. 3 plates, 2 cups. And the space across from him, no longer waiting, only part of the routine. The boy did not look back. He did not need to. His movements returned to what they had always been. Cut, pause, stir, pause. But now, the rhythm no longer belonged to one. It moved quietly, gently, shared within the stillness. And the kitchen, though unchanged, no longer felt empty. The night held steady. It did not fade. It did not shift. It simply remained, resting over the castle like a quiet breath that had no end. The towers stood in silence. The corridors lay undisturbed. The dining hall remained empty, its long table untouched, its single chair still slightly apart. And within the kitchen, the warmth endured. The fire had settled into a low glow. Its flame was small, steady, untroubled. The embers beneath it held their quiet light, breathing gently into the room. Fire, pause, breath. The boy stood near the hearth. His hands rested lightly against the stone, as they had so many times before. His posture remained calm, unchanged, part of the quiet rhythm that shaped the night. Nothing called to him. Nothing required his attention. And yet, after a time, he turned. Step, pause, step. He moved toward the table. The lantern's light followed, stretching softly across the surface, touching the edges of the plates, the curves of the cups, the spaces between them. Everything remained. 3 plates, 2 cups. The same arrangement, the same quiet presence. He stepped closer. Step, pause, step. His gaze lowered, not searching, not expecting, only resting upon what was already there. The plates were no longer untouched, not fully. Each held a small absence, a quiet change that had come without sound, without motion, without disturbance. Nothing had been taken, all at once. Nothing had been emptied, only shared. The boy did not react. He did not reach forward. He simply stood, for a moment, allowing the stillness to settle around him. Then, slowly, he moved, not away, not back, but closer. Step, pause, step. He reached for the chair, the one he had used before. His hand rested lightly against its back. For a moment, he did nothing. Then, gently, he pulled it out. The movement was soft, barely a sound. The chair shifted, just enough. The boy sat. The table rested before him. The plates, the cups, the space across. He did not begin immediately. He did not reach for the food. He simply sat, his hands resting lightly upon the wood, his breathing slow, even, part of the quiet rhythm that filled the room. Across from him, the empty space remained, and yet it did not feel empty. The boy did not lift his gaze. He did not look directly at it, but his awareness rested there, calm, steady, untroubled. After a time, he reached forward. Slowly, his fingers moved toward the plate before him. He took a small portion. He ate. The motion was simple, unbroken. The quiet remained. After a moment, he paused, not in thought, not in hesitation, but as though allowing space once more. Across from him, something shifted, not in sight, not in sound, but in presence. The air changed, slightly, almost not at all, and yet, enough. The boy did not look up. He did not move his head, but his hands rested still upon the table, as though acknowledging what remained unseen. The chair across from him, the one that had never been moved, stood where it always had, pushed in, unchanged. And yet, after a moment, it was not fully. The boy remained still. The lantern's light rested softly across the table, touching the edges of the plates, the cups, the empty space. The chair across from him shifted, only slightly, not pulled, not moved by force, but, no longer fully aligned, a small space appeared between it and the table, barely noticeable, almost nothing, and yet present. The boy did not react. He did not look directly at it. He simply continued. Eat, pause, breath. The rhythm returned. Slow, steady, unbroken. Time passed, not measured, not marked, only held within the quiet. The fire breathed softly behind him. Fire, pause, breath. After a while, the boy reached for the cup beside him. He lifted it. The liquid within caught the faint glow of the firelight. He held it for a moment. Then, slowly, he lowered it again, not drinking, not moving it away, only holding it, then returning it. Across from him, the second cup remained, unmoved, and yet not untouched. The boy did not look. He did not need to. He simply remained seated for a moment longer. Then, slowly, he rose. The chair beneath him returned to stillness. Step, pause, step. He moved away from the table, back toward the hearth. The fire waited. The warmth remained. Behind him, the table held its quiet shape. 3 plates, 2 cups, 2 chairs now, slightly apart, not fully drawn, not fully pushed in, only present. The space across from him no longer needed to be imagined. It remained as it was, as it had become. The boy did not turn back. He did not watch. He returned to his quiet rhythm. Cut, pause, stir, pause, and within the stillness of the kitchen, nothing felt out of place. Nothing felt disturbed, only shared. The night remained as it had become, still, quiet, complete. Nothing within the castle called for change. The towers rested beneath the dim sky. The corridors lay empty. The dining hall held its long silence, its single chair still slightly apart, its table untouched. And within the kitchen, the warmth endured. The fire had settled low. Its glow was faint now, steady, untroubled. The embers held their quiet light, breathing gently into the room without sound. Fire, pause, breath. The boy stood at the table, not arriving, not leaving, only there. The plates remained. 3. The cups beside them. 2. Nothing had been moved since the last time he had sat, and yet nothing remained the same. Each plate now held its quiet absence. Not empty, not full, only shared. The boy's gaze rested upon them for a moment. Then, slowly, he reached for the pot. The motion was familiar, unchanged. He lifted it, stepped forward, and poured. 1 plate, then the next, then the third. He did not replace what had been taken. He did not restore what was gone. He only continued. The liquid settled, warmth returned, the quiet deepened. He set the pot down. The fire breathed softly behind him. Fire, pause, breath. After a time, the boy reached for the chair. He pulled it out, gently, without sound, and sat. The table rested before him, the plates, the cups, the space across. He did not hesitate. He did not wait. He began. Eat, pause, breath. The motion was slow, steady, as it had been before. But this time, something was different, not in what he did, not in what he saw, but in what remained. Across from him, the space was no longer only felt, it was known. The boy did not look directly. He did not raise his eyes, but his awareness rested there, calm, untroubled, certain. After a moment, he paused, not from need, not from thought, but as though allowing space once more. And then, very slowly, the quiet shifted, not in sound, not in movement, but in presence. The plate across from him changed, not suddenly, not fully, but enough. A small portion no longer remained. The boy did not react. He did not lift his head. He simply continued. Eat, pause, breath. The rhythm held, slow, steady, unbroken. After a while, he paused again, and again, the same quiet change. The plate across from him, less, not emptied, not disturbed, only taken, as though the act itself followed the same rhythm, as though it waited, just as he did. The boy's hands rested lightly upon the table. He did not move. He did not look, but his presence remained steady, calm, accepting. Time passed, not measured, not marked, only felt in the slow sharing of what had been placed. The fire breathed, fire, pause, breath. The air held its warmth. The room remained still. And yet, the space across from him was no longer uncertain. It was no longer undefined. It belonged. After a while, the boy reached for his cup. He lifted it, slowly, holding it near. For a brief moment, the motion paused, not interrupted, not uncertain, only shared. Then he lowered it again, setting it gently upon the table. Across from him, the second cup had shifted, only slightly, not drawn, not moved by hand, but closer. The distance between it and the plate had lessened. The boy did not respond. He did not need to. He remained seated, his posture unchanged, his breathing slow. Even after a time, he finished, not fully, not completely, only enough. He lowered his hand. The plate before him remained partly filled, the others, the same, shared, quietly taken. The boy sat for a moment longer. Then, slowly, he rose. The chair returned to stillness. Step, pause, step. He moved away from the table, back toward the hearth. The fire waited. The warmth remained. Behind him, the table held its quiet shape. 3 plates, 2 cups. And across from him, the presence remained. Not seen, not heard, but no longer unknown. It had taken, it had waited, it had remained. The boy did not turn. He did not watch. He returned to his quiet rhythm. Cut, pause, stir, pause. And within the stillness of the kitchen, the act of eating, the act of sharing, the act of being, no longer belonged to one alone. The night held it gently. The fire breathed softly. And across the table, the one who ate remained. The night had settled into its deepest stillness. Nothing within the castle stirred beyond what was needed. The towers stood beneath the dim sky, unmoving. The corridors lay empty, their silence unbroken. The dining hall remained in shadow, its long table untouched, its chairs resting where they had been left. Everything was in its place. Everything at rest. And within the kitchen, the warmth endured. The fire had grown small. Its flame was little more than a quiet glow now, resting close to the embers, breathing softly into the room. The light it gave was gentle, fading at the edges, yet steady, untroubled. Fire, pause, breath. The boy walked his path. Step, pause, step. Nothing in his movement had changed. Nothing needed to. He moved between the hearth and a table, between the shelves and the quiet space that held his work. His hands followed the same motions, the same rhythm as they had always done. Cut, pause, stir, pause. The sound remained soft, barely more than breath. The kitchen held it, gently, without echo, without disturbance. After a time, he turned. Step, pause, step. The table waited. 3 plates, 2 cups, the same arrangement, the same quiet presence. He approached. His gaze lowered. Nothing was missing. Nothing had been disturbed. And yet, nothing remained untouched. Each plate held its quiet absence, each cup its gentle shift. The space across from him no longer needed to be felt. It was there. The boy did not pause. He did not question. He reached for the pot. He poured one plate, then the next, then the third. The motion was slow, steady, unchanged. He did not replace what had been taken. He only continued, as he always had. He set the pot down. The fire breathed softly behind him. Fire, pause, breath. After a moment, he reached for the chair. He pulled it out, softly, without sound, and sat. The table rested before him, the plates, the cups, the space across. He began. Eat, pause, breath. The rhythm was calm, unbroken. Nothing hurried, nothing needed to. After a moment, he paused, and across from him, the quiet answered, not in sound, not in sight, but in presence. The plate crossed from him, less. The cup, slightly shifted. The chair, no longer fully still. The boy did not look. He did not need to. He simply continued. Eat, pause, breath. The act was shared. The rhythm held. Time passed, not measured, not marked, only felt in the gentle giving and taking that required no voice, no form, no name. After a while, the boy lowered his hand. The plate before him remained partly filled. The others, the same. Nothing was empty. Nothing was whole. Only complete. He sat for a moment longer. Further, pause, breath. The air held its warmth. The room remained still, and beside him, something remained. Not behind, not across, but near, keeping pace with his breath, steady, untroubled, as though it had always been there. The boy rose. The chair returned to stillness. Step, pause, step. He moved away from the table, toward the hearth, toward the quiet rhythm that had always guided him. Cut, pause, stir, pause. Behind him, the table remained. 3 plates, 2 cups, and the space that no longer felt empty. The boy did not turn. He did not watch. He did not wait. He continued, as he always had. Step, pause, step. The fire softened further. The light dimmed. The kitchen settled into its final quiet. The castle slept. The halls remained still. The night held everything gently, without edge, without end. And within that quiet, nothing was missing. Nothing was disturbed. Nothing was alone. The boy walked his path. Pause, step. And beside him, within the warmth, within the stillness, within the quiet breath of the night, something walked with him, not seen, not heard, but present, as it had become, as it would remain. The fire breathed softly, the plates rested, the cups stood still, and the kitchen, though unchanged, was no longer empty. It was complete.